Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar about payment test automation. My name is David. I'm the International Key Account Manager for Payment Test Automation at Abrantix, and I will guide you today through the webinar session. So if you have questions or you want to ask us something, feel free to do that with the chat functionality, which is provided from Soho. Rene and myself will take care that we answer them on the spot and you don't need to wait until the end. And first, we will go through a demonstration of the product portfolio, followed by a demo afterwards, which is live and executed on our robots, where I show you some regression and stress testing. Before we kick it off, I would like to know and understand my audience a little better. So I'm going to start a few polls which you can answer. First of all, I would like to know what's your expertise within payment testing. Are you involved in payment testing? Do you do it for some time already, or are you totally new? So let's see what the audience has to say. Votes already coming through. We're gonna leave that up for a second before I'm gonna publish the result to you all. Most of you are somehow involved in testing. There are a few which are new to it. A few of you are just getting started. See, I'm gonna wait a few more seconds if anyone wants to hit the button. And let me publish that result to you all so you can see who's our audience today. So most of you are just getting started with testing. That's a good, yeah, we're here to learn. So that session will be perfect for you all. Then let me see, have you guys which are in the testing already implemented some sort of testing? So this is a multiple choice. Have you implemented PIN entry automation, for example, or card entry, or none at all? So let me know how far you are in testing so that we can also focus the presentation a bit more on what you are actually doing and what your needs are. That's interesting to see. So some of you have known automation at all. Most of you have done something around PIN and card entry. So this must be some sort of robots you are already using. Hopefully the Abrantix solution you have there. Let me see, we have 40% of the people which answered. I'm gonna wait a few seconds for people to make their choice. And that's 50. I'm gonna publish the result for you all so you can see what's happening there. And my last poll before we kick it off, what types of tests do you guys execute? Is it more on the EMV level certification, which you're interested in, or is it regression testing, stress testing? And this is also multiple choice, so feel free to make different choices so that I know where to focus on today. There's a lot of functionality testing happening right now, regression testing a big topic. Not so much stress testing, which is interesting. This might be due to the manual work is very difficult then for stress testing. So as most of you haven't started with automation, it's quite tricky to get going there. But good to see. I'm gonna publish the result for you all. Then you can see what was the vote. And I will kick it off with my presentation. So what we do at Abrantix, we are a company which is based in Switzerland. We have been founded a bit more than 20 years ago in 2001, and we have offices in different locations. So all of our payment test automation is happening in Switzerland and Slovenia, where we have our development team and also the production for the robots. And we have an office in Australia, which helps us to cover the APAC region for support and also for sales tasks. Back in the day, Abrantix started as a payment software engineering company. So we are strong in software development, and we do so, for example, for the master software of Ingenico. This is our core business and our expertise where we come from. And out of this, we had the need to test our own software. And this was just so much work. So we had to find a way how we can improve this. And we've done so with robotics. And then we've learned that there's a market and generated this business area payment test automation, which I'm leading today from a sales view. And that's what we focus on today. So the story I'm going to tell you will sound pretty familiar to what you are experiencing today, as you are just getting started with test automation and you have a lot of manual tests which are cumbersome for you to do, and there's just so much work involved. The main challenge we were facing when we started with test automation was inconsistent quality. So we always had discrepancies in our test results. So depending on which terminal we tested, they behave slightly different. So one might be a bit slower than the other, but also the testers don't behave the same. And therefore, it was very difficult for us to find the bugs. And when you do manual testing, there's a lot of manual reporting involved as well. And this was just not on a level which made ourselves happy and also not our stakeholders. And the whole process is just time consuming. If you have to do a regression test with 400 tests, then you sit there for a week and insert cards and enter pins. And this is just not scalable and not feasible for test automation to be effective. So back in 2016, we started with test automation and we wanted first to get rid of the manual work, which is pin entering and card entering, because this is very, very unproductive time. So we developed the Robot T1, which is doing the automated pin and card entry for us. And this then resolved a big issue already and saved us a lot of time in that view. But with testing, you also have to handle a lot of different test cards. So if you utilize a test card set from B2 or someone else, they easily have 16 different cards in it. And then it's also easy that you mix them up. So we developed multiplexers for contact and contactless cards, and as well a combined one, where you can store your physical cards and then just choose one slot you want to execute on the probe, and therefore you don't need to touch your physical cards anymore. So this helps us to automate the card handling totally from physical cards. Now, we had to address the reporting issue. So our stakeholder, they wanted to have better reporting with logs in it and also to see which test steps have been executed, not just passed or failed. So PaytestHub was the answer to this. So PaytestHub is our test framework, which helps us to do automated report, but it does much more. It also helps us to manage the whole environment with the hardware and the software, with all the extensions, and we write all the test cases in PaytestHub for the test execution too. You will see that afterwards in the live demo, how that looked like. And the latest development we were challenged with was that the POS terminals, they get bigger and bigger and they don't fit on our Robot T1 if they are too big. So we had to find a solution, and the answer to this is the Robot T4, which has been launched in September. The T4 is capable to host either large terminals or up to 4 terminals. So depending on your setup, you would either use a Robot T1 or a Robot T4 and have then more flexibility in your testing environment. Good. A fact which you have to know: if you start test automation, don't expect that you will be done on the next day. Getting into test automation is a continuous journey. So once you invest in the initial setup, you will then start to grow and develop more test cases for your Q&A department. How we utilize payment test automation internally is with that setup. So we have PaytestHub as our test framework, which is hosted in the cloud and communicates with the hardware, so the robots and the multiplexers, which is doing the physical test execution and then sends the commands back to PaytestHub. Let's dive in a bit on the products. PaytestHub is our cloud-native test framework. It's hosted on AWS, and this gives you a very big advantage. If you have the test framework on the cloud, you can access it from wherever you are. So I'm currently sitting in the office. The robot is not far away, but I could be doing this demo from my home office, or I could be wherever I want. I can also access my robots in Slovenia. So if you have testers which are in different locations, or you have two test teams which want to utilize the same hardware, this is possible to do with PaytestHub, as you just access everything through the cloud. Then those are our two robots. On the left, you do see the robot T1, and on the right, the robot T4. To give you a better idea about the size, the terminal, the Verifone P400, is placed on both robots, so you have an indication about the size of the robot. Both robots could be equipped with extensions such as the OCR, and the robot T4, as mentioned, can use 1 up to 4 terminals, so you will just add additional card arms if you want to have more terminals with it. Then a quick view on our multiplexers. We do have contact and contactless multiplexer as well as a combined multiplexer available, so we can cover all your test needs. The contactless multiplexer also has the possibility to insert a smartphone. However, with newer technologies such as ADB and also extensions for iPhone, it's easier if you have the smartphone mounted on the robot T4 and interact with the robot directly with the smartphone as well. So you can, for example, also change between apps or open the wallet and choose a different card, which is not possible if the phone is mounted in the multiplexer. To round everything up, we have other things in our portfolio, such as our newly launched PayTest Probe. This is a probe which we launched in collaboration with ICC and B2 Payment Solutions. It enables you to automate the ICC EMV Level 3 test automation. And also it's a combined probe, so it has contact, contactless, and MagStripe in one probe installed. Then we have different extensions such as OCR for screen recognition and ADB for interacting with Android terminals. Makes your testing much more easier if you can use ADB, but we can focus on that then afterwards as well. A quick view on the architecture. PaytestHub and Payment Test Automation Solutions is very flexible to utilize. So you will need to have a test framework. So this can be PaytestHub, like we provided from Abrantix directly. But if you already have a test system existing, you will be able to integrate with the REST API and an extension. So this is a customization we can do for you, or maybe the customization is already there. So we do have partners like IntelliQA, which mostly combines the solution with Eggplant and then handles big retail solutions. This is very flexible for you to use. Through the REST API, which is installed locally, you communicate then with individual parts of our hardware. So you communicate with the robot, you communicate with the multiplexer and the probes, and all the results are shared back into your test framework. So also you have the possibility to test directly from your test tools. So if you use the UL test tool or the ICC test tool, you can execute tests directly from the tools with the robot to automate your EMV Level 3 certification. So I was wondering to all of you which use test tools, which is your preferred test tool for EMV certifications? And if you're not involved on EMV certification, there's an option for you as well. It's multiple choice if you have both tools. So let me see, we can bring the interaction back up and you're still following. Great, there's a lot of people using the UL tool. ICC, a few others, that must be theme or other players in the market, and just very limited people which don't do any EMV certification. UL, ICC, almost the same. Yeah, that's what we expect. Yeah. Great. I'm gonna publish the result there, so you can see this as well. If time allows, I'm gonna show a recording how we can utilize the UL tool to execute directly from PaytestHub. I'm gonna put that into the demo afterwards. Good. If you have questions on the portfolio, feel free to put them into the chat or the Q&A section. I'm happy to take them on the spot. Otherwise, I will continue and go to a few challenges which we could solve with payment test automation. The one big challenge which we were able to resolve, or challenge, one big thing which we made was the 5,000 transactions in a row stress test. So we created a stress test in PaytestHub where we execute 5,000 times exactly the same transactions on the different terminals. So executing 5,000 transactions takes roughly 48 hours to complete. Obviously, it depends a little bit on how many test steps you have in there. But the key findings we made from this stress test was that none of the terminals which we initially tested passed this stress test. So we found a lot of bugs from our own software as well as other softwares, which we were able then to resolve and debug and improve the software quality drastically this way. And imagine if you would need to do 5,000 transactions manually, you would be sitting there for, I don't know, 2 weeks or so. The time savings you have with robotics is just immense. Speaking about time savings, it's a bit hard to compare a human with a robot. But we try just to make the best guess and estimate. So this depends very much on which test case you want to execute, how many test steps are involved, how detailed do you want your reporting to be if you do it manually. But let's estimate you have to do 800 tests, be it per year or for a certification run or a regression test. If you would have a traditional tester doing 800 tests and they would be able to do 30 tests per hour, it takes you 27 hours to complete this certification. So this is a lot of time. If you compare it with the robots, we are able to do within 1 hour around 100 tests. So completing a certification for 800 tests would only take you 8 hours to do. So you could start the robot before you go home. Next morning when you come to the office, your test is done and you can just continue with your daily work. And that's exactly what we do in Slovenia as well. So our test engineering or the engineers which develop the software, they also utilize the robots. So every night before they go home, they upload the latest firmware to different robots and terminals and execute 300 to 400 tests on the firmware. And in the morning when they come in, they first go and check the reports if there's any faulty test case or if they have made a bug. And if so, this first gets fixed before they continue with the development of the software. This way, we were able to shorten our release cycle time from 6 months to once a month, which is a huge improvement for ourselves, but also for our customer. Good. Having a quick look at the reporting functionality, I told you already that when the test case is finished, we are able to generate an automated report for you. That's how that looks like. So we have a test report, the summary, we have a table of content, then we have a summary of all the test cases which have been running. In this example, it's just one. It's rather simple. You will see afterwards if you execute 100 test cases, the PDF file is getting quite big. And then you see all the test cases which have been executed and all the steps and even the result to each single step. So it's very detailed and very accurate for your reporting, and it's done automatically. You don't need to do anything manual anymore. Let me sum this up before we go to the live demo. So we can help you to execute more test cases with a higher accuracy and improve quality because the robot is working all the time and it's following exactly the same step each test. So there's no discrepancy in your testing anymore. We can help you to improve the release cycle time as you will save a lot of time for testing, which you can reinvest in either creating additional test cases or in software development. And that is just a huge shift in your workload, which reduces your costs for testing overall. Good. If there are no more questions, I will move forward and go to the live demo. Feel free to stop me anytime and we take that on the spot then. What you see here, this is our tenant for the demo environment. So you see, this is the demo environment for my own account. If I go to my account settings, I do have possibility to change my password or change my personal information, which I use to log into PaytestHub. And that's the basic functionality. On the main page, we have an overview of all my agents, which are connected to my tenant. So the agent is a REST API, which is installed on a local computer and which enables or manages the hardware and the software extensions. And this is the communication between the physical hardware and my cloud environment. We do have an agent tree view, which gives us an overview of all the agents and the terminals which are installed. So this Castles terminal has different extensions. We're gonna dig into that then afterwards. But you see, this is the T4 robot we have connected as well, and there are 4 terminals on the robot, and some of them are currently being set up. Some of them are online and running. Let me dig down into one of the agents for you. So this agent is in Zurich. We use that for the demos. It's currently connected. You do see the IP address and everything, and there are 2 environments connected to this. An environment is basically, it's not only the robot, so it's what we call the terminal and what is communicating with the terminal. So if I'm going to this Castles terminal, we see that this environment then has a contact multiplexer, a contactless multiplexer. We have a camera which shows us the display. We have an EP2 gateway. So for everyone joining from Switzerland and from the payment industry, EP2 is a name to you. For everyone else, is a specific payment scheme used in Switzerland, which we communicate to expect certain responses. Then we have the robot. We have a second camera for the probe, so you see actually what's happening, and the 6ML extension to give commands to our hardware. Now let me run a test case, and then I'm going to explain what's happening. So we're gonna run 10 test cases. I'm gonna choose the environment for the Castles terminal. Gonna get this started and pull up 2 cameras so we see what's happening. Good. So on the far left, we do see that this is a small stress test, which execute 10 times the same test for you guys. In the middle, we see then from this test case, all the individual steps which are being tested. So we do have a header, which says, for example, prepare the terminal, create the transaction log, and then we have specific commands which communicate with our extensions. And then it says execute action connect. So the terminal connects, and then we log in, we clear the terminal, and so on. And we connect with the card multiplexer. We choose the right slot for the testing. We insert the card. We await the PIN entry event, enter the PIN, and then conclude the transaction. So this way, your tests are built in PaytestHub. You have to give exact commands to the robot so that each step is executed, tested, and then also reported back into the software. So on the top view on this camera, you can see that this is the OCR recognition. The OCR recognition is used for executing test cases as well. So if you don't have an ADB-enabled terminal where you can read the screen directly through ADB, you need to have OCR to communicate back to PaytestHub what's happening on the terminal. In this case, we have the ECR log file, which is coming back to PaytestHub. So ECR is the electronic cash register, and this is basically the cash system which comes back to PaytestHub, and then the terminal knows and PaytestHub knows in which state it is, and then continues with the test cases. And on the below camera, you can see the robot entering the PIN and as well the card, which just came in here on the bottom. Gonna let this test execute and then show you the log files which we receive. Good. So on the PaytestHub page where we have our tests running, we have a few details. So on top, we see the result. So it's currently ongoing. We have a total of 10 tests. Currently 4 have been successful. So far 0 has failed, and the duration is 2 minutes, 39 seconds. On the right side, we receive the logs from all the different extensions. Let me enlarge this for you. And this is live. So you see when the test is being executed, all those log files are pulled back into PaytestHub, and we can afterwards analyze them. So if something would fail, we could go and dig down, why did it fail? What was the response from a certain extension? And this way you have really good debugging functionalities. So as this goes quite fast, let me go back to a test case which has been executed. Then we can see, for example, when we had the command insert, what were the logs which we received. So we have different logs coming from the host and from the robot extension, as well as the extension API, which is from top to bottom. Then we have execute automation insert. The response from the robot was okay, I'm ready to do the insert. Then we disconnected the extension and then it said complete and that's it. So this is rather simple on the logs. But if we have something else, let me see, I'm just going to click something which has a bit more tasks. So for example, the pin entry event is here. This is then how we can really digest what has been happening in payment test. While this test is running, I will go back to the results afterwards. Just want to pull up a test which I have done this afternoon for all of you. So this was done here. So in this test case, we executed 100 tests. 98 of them have been successful, 2 failed. This is absolutely normal. Can be lags from the costs terminal, which we found. So the issue here is that the pin entry event display comes up too late. We have a timeout of 30 seconds. You can see that here, timeout. And if the screen doesn't come up after 30 seconds, the terminal fails and the test is then failed as well. So the duration to execute this 100 tests was 1 hour, 5 minutes. And if I'm gonna open up that PDF file, so this is then instantly created for the user. It takes a moment to create a PDF file as it's quite sizey. Go. You see, compared to the other file I showed you, this already has 380 pages. And it has, again, a summary of all the tests. And then at the bottom, we have, again, each and every test case which has been executed. And it also shows you then each and every test step in this test case. At the very, very bottom of this report, you would have the functionality to sign it for approval. So if you want, you can use then these reports from PaytestHub as your release note for internal purpose or for your stakeholders. So you have proof that your software release has actually been tested. I got a question there in the Q&A section. The question is, how long is the data stored in PaytestHub, so the retention period? It's a good one. We do have currently the data stored for 6 months, which will be good enough for saving all the data, and then afterwards it's deleted. But you always have the functionality to download the reports and store them locally as a PDF file. So that's how you could utilize this. And there's a second question coming in. Could you please explain the meaning of the pin entry command? How is the robot instructed to input the pin 1, 2, 3, 4? Let me dig into that for you. So we have the tests. So this is the question which is referring to enter pin 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have the command pin entry. So if I'm going to the test case, this is the individual test case. We do write our test cases in YAML. That's a programming language for those which are not familiar with it. And we have 2 different options to write our test cases. So you can either write it in a tree view with our user interface, which looks like that. So you can simply add automation steps by saying which extension you want to target and which command you want to execute. So in this case, for the pin entry event, the command will be pin entry. Now, how do we get that value? So the actual pin, this is a good one. So we have a variable, which is here. So we do set the variable for this test step to 1, 2, 3, 4, and OK. So the robot knows which button it has to press. Now, having variables in your test case makes your testing much more flexible. If you would write 100 test cases and you write 1, 2, 3, 4 into your test case, you instead of pin entry, you would need to go into 100 test cases to change it. Whereas if you have it as a variable, you change it once and it's automatically updated in all different test cases as well. So I mentioned as well, you can write in 2 different views. The second view will be a script view. So for those who are more familiar with XML writing or HTML, then or YAML, this is the script view as well, where you can just simply communicate with the robot itself. Good. There's a second question coming in. I'm gonna address that afterwards. I just want to finish this on the writing the test cases. So we're gonna take a quick look into the API, and it also addresses the question, which is how do you manage the setup of a POS against the robot, and how long does it take on average? So let me open the API documentation to finish up the test case writing. In our API, we do have the 6ML extension, and in there, we do have different commands. So if you, for example, want to log in to the terminal, you will need to use this example command, execute action login. Or if you want to cancel something, you will need the action, execute action cancel. So those are the commands you need to build your test case. Currently, this is a bit of copy paste, or you will need to have it in your mind and just write it out. But in the future, we will have a feature available where you can just drag and drop your test cases, or you record it through ADB. Now, going to the second question about how to set up a POS in PaytestHub or on the robot, I'm going to move up to the robot API part. So we do have same commands for the robot as well, where you can communicate with the robot through the API. And if I'm scrolling a bit down, you will see all the supported terminals which are currently available in PaytestHub. So what we are doing is we need to have, if the terminal wouldn't be on this list, so we do have quite a big part of Ingenico covered. We have PAX terminals, Verifone terminals, word lines. If your terminal wouldn't be here, we would need to have your physical terminal in Slovenia to create a base plate, which is holding the terminal on the robot. And we will also create a mapping of your terminal and then insert it as a piece of code into the REST API. So afterwards, you will go to PaytestHub, you go to the extension you want to set up, you go to the robot, and then you go to terminal configuration and you choose which terminal type it is. And then the robot knows, oh, this is the Saturn. So in XY coordinates on my robot baseplate, I have to go to 10, 20, and then there's the corner of my terminal, and my basic buttons are on this and this. Now, if you would have a different user interface than the initial terminal which we had, you will be required for the first time to remap your buttons because they might be on a different location. So this might take you, if you are not used to setting up a robot and a terminal, around 40 minutes for the initial setup. Once you are used to changing a base plate or setting up the robot, you get down to 15 minutes of time. And coming very soon, we will have an ADB live stream available where you can then just interact on PaytestHub with your Android terminal and then simply press a button and the robot knows exactly the coordinates of that button. So setting up terminals will be even easier in the future. This feature is rolled out in coming weeks. So we do then a webinar around December to show you that feature as well. I'm gonna go back to my test execution. This was a test we just started during the webinar. So we started it at 10 to 5 European time. Took us, what was that, 6 minutes. Everything was fine. And again, for this test, which we executed, I simply click the download button and there's my report, which I'm now sending off for approval. I'm quickly pulling up the video I promised on the EMV automation with the UL brand test tool. So you see how this is automated through PaytestHub. Give me a second on that one, and then we are good to go. Okay. Here, that. So pulling that over. Okay. Here you will see how we automated the EMV level 3 certification with the UL brand test tool. To do so, you will need to have the UL brand test tool, obviously. You will need to have the automation extension from UL, and then the EMV level 3 player from us. Then simply you load your tests you want to execute. So in this demo, we import the MasterCard test scenario 19 into PaytestHub, and afterwards execute this then through the robot, fully automated. The robot follows the test steps which are defined in the brand test tool. So once we start this, it will receive the individual steps from the tool and then execute this contactless transaction on the robot. So it goes to transaction, we'll enter the amount, and once it's finished, the result is automatically shared back to the brand test tool as well, because we are not an EMV certified tool. So you will need to have ICC or UL for the certification, but we are also able to send back the results into the testing. So you see this green tick mark there. This is now approved. Obviously, this is just one test case. So if you would like to do the certification, the full certification, you would need to load all the tests into PaytestHub and then just let them run and go and enjoy a coffee, which we didn't do because it would take way too much time to just sit here and watch. So that's how test automation can be done for UL. There's one more question coming in from a participant. We have stored all test cases in Excel. How can I bring them into PaytestHub? Well, that's a good question. So for time being, if you have stored them in Excel, you will be asked to rewrite your tests in PaytestHub. So you will need to have some manual work done, and then you write your test cases like we did in here. So you have to choose your extensions, give the commands, and then tweak your tests. Obviously, we are here to support, so we can give you training on how to write test cases, what's the best practice. We can help you to do the first 10, 20, 30 tests, or if you have hundreds of tests, we are also happy to write all of them for you, so you don't need to worry at all about testing and writing, and we basically provide you full set with all tests involved, and then you're ready to go and just kick it off. Great. Are there any more questions from the audience coming in? Feel free to put them in the chat. Otherwise, we will be 5 minutes ahead of time and we would wrap it up. And also interact with reactions. If everyone is fine, give me a thumbs up and then we would wrap it up afterwards. So, yep. Great. Perfect. Thank you very much for attending. It was great to have you. We will share the recording afterwards with all of you via email, so you can rewatch it or share it with your colleagues. If anyone is interested in a follow-up, feel free to drop me a message by email, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, whatsoever you prefer, and we take a look at your individual solution. So thanks for joining today. Have a wonderful evening or morning, wherever you are, and see you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you.